All right. Well, welcome in, guys. This is JE Live, and I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me is Mr. Underdog Fantasy Corporate Man himself, Sosa Kremenjas. How you doing, man? So much to, it's awesome because I was just listening to our old podcast we did like 2-3 years ago. It's awesome to do another show with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It's fun. It's always fun to get back on the mic, man. I miss it. You don't realize how much you enjoy doing something until you can't do it no more. So it's great to get back in front of the camera on the mic. It kind of feels new to me, almost like I never even did it. But big week. It's a big week for sure.
Oh.
I think a lot of Rams fans are excited. I'm kind of excited and anxious already, and it's Wednesday. So that tells you kind of where I'm at. But I feel great, man. It's going to be fun to kind of break this game down and everything else.
No, absolutely. And we'll be talking about the whole championship weekend. You and I both have kind of similar thoughts, but maybe a little bit different insight. Figured I'd bring you in. First off, I want to start, the Rams coming away with that win and now going to San Francisco. You have everybody talking about streaks. We constantly hear it. Jimmy Garoppolo's 9-2. He doesn't have to throw a touchdown pass, right? He's 3-0 in the playoffs when he doesn't throw a touchdown pass, like crazy, right? But we just heard that Tom Brady had only lost one game when wearing white tops. It's like, at one point, do you just kind of throw the streaks out the window? They've lost 6 straight to the Niners, but they've never played in a playoff game against the Niners in those 6 times. So, like, to me, aren't you kind of in my boat as like, just let it play out? I mean, the Rams were undefeated when leading at halftime, and they lost that game week 18. I just think kind of streaks are a little bit outplayed a little bit.
No, I agree for sure. I think it's more of like a media fabrication kind of thing that's fun to talk about, and it writes good headlines. I'm sure you listen to Good Morning Football or something this week, you're going to hear 6-0, 6-0. The Rams are kind of got their back against the wall, and they sort of do. But I was thinking about it earlier this week. Like, I would feel more comfortable where the Rams are right now, 0-2 versus the 49ers this season, as opposed to the other side. Like, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a year, and I know that even looking through some of their, Twitter threads and things like that, they're kind of nervous about the idea of trying to go 3-0 against one team. So, it's fun to talk about. It's kind of like that media stuff where we're going to eat it up. But in general, I don't think there's much to it. Like, the only thing that's kind of interesting about this to me, the fact that they've played a lot, is that they're divisional rivals, right? You're not really going to surprise each other anymore. So that's kind of the only thing I think about it in terms of, the media stuff.
No, I totally agree with you. And, another thing I keep hearing is, the Rams, they did this. They won twice against Seattle back in the day, with Mark Bulger and company, and they beat Seattle in that wild card game. And, I hear Niners fans now bringing that up as if like, well, we can do that too. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. Okay, the Rams are the better team, and you and I discussed this. Both of us believe that they are the best team in the league. It's just a matter of if they play their style of game, no one is beating them this year when they play their style of football. They don't turn the ball over. And I know Niners fans are now clinging on to that idea. Well, they just fumbled 4 times and they give up a 27-3 lead. But here's the deal. They're not doing that against Jimmy Garoppolo because Jimmy Garoppolo being down 27-3 would play perfectly into the Rams' hands. Tom Brady can lead you back in that regard. I'm sure Matthew Stafford could if given the opportunities with the turnovers and stuff. Rodgers, guys like that can obviously throw the ball downfield. Garoppolo,
SWB audio
basically, if the
capture
Niners have
not
Garoppolo throwing
registered.
over 40 times in this game, we already know without looking at the scoreboard, first off, that's not what Shanahan wants. And second, we know that without even looking at the scoreboard, the Rams are probably in good position to be going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I don't think Safe Ran's going to want that, right? For sure. So
No.
I don't necessarily expect it to be the case. I hope it is. But, I think the Niners do match up well with the Rams. What they want to do is sort of different compared to what everyone else does in the NFL, right? Everyone wants to air it out, especially the Rams. You look at going 5 wide, empty. We all kind of complain about it. But San Fran, totally different style. They want to get under center, fullback, 21 personnel, all this kind of weird, heavy stuff. And go back to 2003 or something with Eddie George on Tennessee or whatever. So it's kind of weird, and it's a different team to prepare for. But luckily for the Rams, they've done it twice now. Like, there's no secrets anymore. Yeah, you might have 1 trick play or 2 trick plays, up your sleeve that you haven't pulled out yet. But in general, at this point, like, the reason I feel comfortable about it is you've shown everything you are going to show this season, and you've done it twice against the Rams. The Rams, same thing as the 49ers. There's no more surprises, I don't think. At this point, it's who is more talented, who's going to show up and perform. And I think back to that last game in week 18, The Rams O-line, they played bad. It was one of their worst games this season, and they still put up 24 points. Stafford still looked fairly comfortable in that game. Yes, they choked it away. There was no killer mentality there, and, it is what it is. But in general, I think you got to feel pretty decent about how that one played out. Going into this next one, you look at Green Bay, they put up 10 points against that defense. The Rams put up 24, and they were awful on the O-line. So, and if I recall off the top of my head, no running game either in that game. So, I think you got to feel pretty good about how they match up. And I'm sure the Niners feel the same way. They're very different compared to everyone else, and they got a great defense too. But, it's going to be fun to see two kind of genius offensive guys, head coaches going at it, hired in the same hiring cycle. It's going to be fun. I mean, 3-0 against the Rams, that would not bode well,
audio
especially in the Rams
capture,
house.
not
the Rams, I think, are a better
registered.
team. So I'm just going to ride with them for now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I have this game going 27-17 Rams. I think that there's a chance, and I'm not saying they will, but I think there's a real chance here that they just blow them out of the water. I mean, I think they did that against the Cardinals. The Cardinals, I think a lot of it came into lack of their playoff experience with Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. But the Rams just suffocated them. I mean, it did not matter who was back there at quarterback in that game. I think Tom Brady would have been blown out in that game. I mean, they took care of the ball. They ran the ball with Sony Michel and Cam Akers. They were still able to, get through the air. The funny thing, Sosa, is how basically the narrative changed from, well, Matthew Stafford isn't trusted as much because he only completed 17 passes, to then the next week, everyone was quiet. And it's just funny to me because we're now penalizing quarterbacks for getting the job done more efficiently. He was averaging like 15 yards per, completion, and now he's getting penalized because, well, now McVay doesn't trust him because he's only throwing however many, That's the thing, is that I think the thing at the end of the day is that when you look at Stafford and you look at McVay and you look at basically, Stafford has the most comebacks in the NFL since 2009 when he entered the league. He has to play a different way now than he did with the Lions. He was used to being down 7, 14, 17, 20, even 24 points. Now with the Rams, you have everybody else. You don't need to do that. You don't need to get cute. And, I just think it's been a little bit for Stafford to kind of get into that rhythm and play to, basically protect the lead and play to win the game, but not necessarily having to live to play another down, throw the ball away. He has the fewest throwaways, I believe, in the league for any quarterback.
Registered.
But we've seen it down the stretch, so I mean, he's changed the way he plays quarterback. He is not going deep down the field into that double, triple coverage. He's throwing that ball away. He actually had a few in that game. So you love to see it, and, obviously the hope is that he continues playing like that moving forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's kind of the thing that he has to keep in the back of his mind. And I know you want them to play free and play their game. And I don't think you can ever fully change who he is, right? He's like that gunslinger, Brett Favre. I'm going to, sometimes kill you, but sometimes it'll backfire too, type of thing. But I think, like you mentioned, throughout the 2 playoff games, at least, he's been smart with, knowing that he doesn't have to do it all. Like, it's not week 13 anymore. You can lose a game and go to the next week, and it is what it is. Now it's like, you lose, you're out. So if there's no throw there, or if it's close enough to where, it might be a risky one, it might be better to just ground it, or, throw it out of bounds, or eat the sack, whatever the case is, because you have that defense that's more often than not going to, not allow people to score 7 points. You have so many offensive playmakers where, you could dump the ball off to Cam Akers on 3rd and 9, and he's going to go get you that first down. We've seen it in Arizona, and it was called back. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th quarter. It was a holding. But you got all these instances now where he doesn't have to be the guy that really just shoulders the load. And, of course, quarterbacks are always going to have to do that. But you got playmakers. We've seen OBJ put the ball in his hands, get him out in space. Cooper Kupp, one of the hardest players in the league to tackle. I mean, the guy's crazy when it comes to yak. So I really like that idea of, just play it safe more often than not. Sometimes you got to go for the throat, as they say. I still love that. But if it's risky, better to err on the side of caution, I think.
No, and I agree. And now I think a lot of people are asking, with Cam Akers 2 fumbles, and, you have Sony Michel, who played well, but I think, keep in mind, people have forgotten that he didn't just get taken out of the lineup right after the Minnesota game. He, did start to kind of go down a little bit. He wasn't over 100 yards in every game after that. So I do think that there's some, there's understanding, and I think the decision to go with Cam in this game made sense. I just think Tampa sold out to stop the run. And, obviously those 2 fumbles can't happen, but it's not like Akers fumbles every game. And there are people saying that he should be cut. I don't agree with that. But I do also think, getting Darrell Henderson back, I think he's going to help in the passing game. I think Cam helps in the passing game. And to be honest with you, I think the biggest issue with Cam Akers and why, you're a fantasy guy, I'm a fantasy guy, why I'm a little worried long-term with Cam Akers, he doesn't have the nose for the end zone the way Todd Gurley did. So, I watch him at the goal line, and he just doesn't punch it in the way you would expect him to. And he has fumbled there. I mean, he fumbled there, week 17 against Arizona last year. Then he fumbles at the 1 in a freak thing, sure, but against Tampa. I feel like Sony Michel should be the goal line back, but I do feel like they also have to figure out a way to use Cam. They have to figure out a way to use Darrell Henderson. And I do think they are in a little bit of a predicament because keep in mind, as great as Cam can be, he's still not the best pass protector at all when it comes to either Henderson, who's surprisingly really good for his stature. A lot of people don't believe that, and Sony Michel.
Yeah. I see exactly what you're saying. I've seen you kind of arguing with people this week on Twitter as well. People saying Cam shouldn't be playing no more. I think it's crazy. I mean, I get it. He fumbled twice and it almost cost the Rams the game. Like, let's call it what it is. The second fumble was just awful. You cannot lose the ball there. We all know there's one thing you can't do. It's lose the ball. First one, like you said, freak thing. I got nothing for that one. It's just 9 times out of 10, he's going to be down in that scenario. It just is what it is. So for me, though, I think, he looks explosive. He looks like he's 100% healthy. I think this is the guy that should be out there, 75 to 80% of the time. Like, I want that kind of a weapon out on the field, if not just for the reason that he adds another layer to this offense. And I said it on Twitter. You see those deep passes against Arizona, where one of them is a little bit short, but probably could have been a 40, 50-yard catch, if not a touchdown. The second one from OBJ, ironically enough, kind of weird there. Another 40-yard catch. You see the 3rd and 9, like we talked about a minute or two ago, converts that. Like, this is a guy that I want to have the ball in space because he can create way better than everyone else on the roster. Now, in terms of the goal line, it might be beneficial to go someone bigger, stronger, Sony Michel. And I think he did a really good job while he was kind of the running back 1 there near the goal line. Like, he was oftentimes converting. And then you mentioned, Darrell Henderson. Is he going to play this game? Potentially. He's another option too. So for me, I kind of look at it as like a 70-30 type of split. You get him out there 70% of the time. The other guys you can kind of mix and match for 30%. But I think Akers is just so explosive. He's such a good player, and he's running mean. I mean, there's a difference, I think, between how he ran last year and how he's running this year. And I think it's kind of that, I sat on the sideline 6 months. I'm going to make people feel me right now. I'm kind of pissed off kind of thing. So that's a guy you need out there. I think, this is the kind of guy that can overcome bad blocking more than everyone else on the roster too. And you mentioned Tampa. We knew they were an elite run defense. They were never going to give up, 150 yards on the ground. That was not going to happen.
Oh, Sos. Did I lose you, man? Ah, bummer. All right, well, there we go. I got you, buddy. Let's see. Yeah, technical difficulties, folks.
You getting me all right?
Yeah, I got you.
You see me all right?
Yeah.
Hold on here. Switching my camera. I think it should be good. All right, let me go with this one. This one should work. There we go.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but that right there is why I don't use StreamYard, and I prefer just mirroring it over to Streamlabs.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It just said my camera was disconnected. That was potentially on me, so don't know what happened, but we're here. We're here, all right? Get Cam Akers out on the field. That's where we're at.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, and here's the thing that I think a lot of people forget is just because Sony Michel took a run for 25 yards, that that's not necessarily a great thing. They might have left 50 on the field if Akers had been in there. You know what I mean? So I do think that is a big issue. And, it's funny. Now you're a meme because you said happen over and over again.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. But, I do think it's funny because, my dad actually, it's funny. This is where I get all my statistical prowess or whatever from. My dad actually made this huge analysis for both backs, and it was interesting. So I don't know if you saw it. I don't know if I even posted this one, but it was basically all of the runs, whether it's a loss, 0 or fewer, 1 or fewer, 2 or 3, 2 or fewer, 3 or fewer, 4 or greater, 5 to 9 yards, and 10 or greater. Looking at Akers, he's a 3 or fewer guy. Michel's a 3 or fewer guy. They both average over 50% of their runs are 3 yards or fewer. Henderson's is actually 4 or greater. So I honestly do like the idea of bringing him in kind of as a change of pace guy, using him on those wheel routes. We saw him absolutely destroy and dust Tay Crowder of the Giants in that game when they used him on that wheel route, back pylon of the end zone. I think that they should use all three, though. Sony Michel in short area yardage, Sony Michel at the goal line. Use Cam, like you said, 70% of the time. If you split the 15 with Sony, in the short area, and then, putting Henderson in there, I mean, you can eat with all three of them. And I do think that's a legit thing that, I'm hoping we see this weekend because, when you look at what the Green Bay Packers did in the divisional round last year, like I was bummed we didn't see more of that, where they used Jamal, they used A.J. Dillon, they used Aaron Jones, and at one point they had all three running backs out there. And we've heard McVay always toy with we're going to go with the dual threat, the dual backfield and whatnot. I'm kind of bummed that we haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's hard for me to kind of expect it just because I feel like McVay's always said, we want to do two or we want to keep him fresh, and it never works out that way.
Yeah.
It's never worked out like since 2017 with Gurley, and the only time they really ever had was like a decent split was when Gurley was really banged up in the playoffs 2018 and CJ Anderson was kind of, that Dallas game, you think about that one. But it's never really been like, 60-40, 65-35. It's always been like 90-10 or, 95-5. He's one of the more like heavy running back one type of guys. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think it would be good to keep him fresh for sure. I don't see no problem with, rotating 70-30, like I said. But in general, I think we all kind of are on the same page in terms of, I just don't know how much success the running game is going to have in this one. Like if the Rams are going to win this game, I think it's going to be on Stafford's arm. I think he's going to have, 250, 280, 300 yards passing. So, we could debate the running game, but I think in general, it's just kind of going to be that grind it out, try and stay ahead of the chains, 3 yards, keep them honest kind of thing in this one.
And I'll tell you, if they can establish the run, I don't see how the Niners win this game. I mean, I really don't see a way if the Rams establish the run, if they're able to play their game, and then you go to the way the defense is playing under Raheem Morris, the way, like playoff Vaughn looks like, it kind of like how we saw, and I said this coming in, he looks like we saw Ndamukong Suh go to that next level when they got to the playoffs in 2018-2019 season. I mean, when you have a guy playing at that level, and keep in mind what, isn't talked about enough, is the lack of wear and tear on Vaughn this year. I mean, maybe all time, sure, but you're talking about a guy that didn't play a ton this year. The Broncos, he's traded to the Rams. He misses the first 2 games. He has to get acclimated in the system. There's a bye shortly after the first game he plays. And now you're talking about Vaughn, who didn't get all that wear and tear, who doesn't deal with these double or triple teams like Donald does, who still isn't, by the way, who's arguably playing better than anybody on the field right now when he's on the field. You're talking about this guy getting 1v1 matchups on a potentially banged up Trent Williams. And on top of it, he's fresh as can be. We talk about how fresh Akers is. Now, what about like guys like Vaughn? They're fresh too in a sense. They don't need an entire season. He hasn't even played a full season's worth of games despite playing in a 17-game schedule. So I think that's why he's starting to, really emerge. And then playoff Scotty in the back end. Nick Scott was a big reason why they lost that game against the 49ers. He couldn't tackle to save his life. They missed 19 tackles in that game, a season high. Nick Scott has been unbelievable in the playoffs. Go back to Seattle last year, the huge pass breakup. I believe that was on DK Metcalf. Played pretty well, I thought, against the Packers. But, I mean, what we just saw out of Tampa in Arizona, he just continues to ball out in the playoffs. I guess, like, he should only play in the playoffs because this guy's a different breed when he plays in the playoffs. But they're going to be getting Rapp back potentially. They're going to be getting Ernest Jones. And I think Sebastian Joseph Day absolutely changes the game. If they can get him back, this is a team that ran down their throat in that November game on Monday Night Football. And then you look at they made adjustments and they were still able to run the ball with Eli Mitchell and Debo, but they made adjustments and you could see they were doing a better job at stopping the run. I think part 3, if they have Sebastian Joseph Day back, they might be able to neutralize that run.
Honestly, yeah, I think that's the biggest key here. Like from the injured guys, if you could pick anyone to have back, I think it's Bash, and I don't think it's close. Like this guy, in my opinion, was a top 3 run stuffer in the NFL before he got hurt, of course. He's entering a contract season now, which is kind of unfortunate. He might be gone in March. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, throughout the offseason, not right now.
Yeah.
But imagine having him out there. You have another top 3 nose tackle in Greg Gaines. You have Ashawn Robinson, and maybe they're not going to play all together, but you're going to keep a fresh rotation of guys that can be super stout up front like that. I think it's game changing. Like, I think it's huge. Now, there's no indication yet as of right now, as of, we're recording this, that he will be able to go or not. We don't know for sure. In terms of the injured guys, it sounds like Ernest Jones probably has the best chance to go. But it is interesting. I think having a Sebastian Joseph Day would be massive for the running defense. No questions asked. Ernest Jones, you get some more speed out there. You mentioned Taylor Rapp. And I've seen a lot of people, even in the comments here or even on Twitter, DMing me, like, people are really curious about the safety spot. And I guess I want to hear your take after I say this too. They're saying, would you break it up? Would you put Rapp back out there? Would you not ride the hot hand type of situation? So I think it's a good question. And like, I don't really know what the answer is. I think I would probably ride the hot hand. Scott's got to be out there. I think he's the best replacement for a guy like Jordan Fuller. He's got more range and speed versus that other, position where you have the more in-box kind of guy, Weddle, Taylor Rapp, that kind of position. I think I might keep going with Weddle. Like, he played 61 snaps last week. I think Terrell Burgess had like 12 or 14. So they clearly prefer the veteran. And I think that knowledge and the IQ and being able to line up guys and communicate, I think it's been big on the back end. So I would probably go with that scenario, but I want to hear what you think.
No, I agree. I look at it when you get into this part in the season, and this is why, like, going back to like Michelle, like if he was running, 100 yards every single game, I would have just kept, riding with him and just had, put Cam Akers in position to succeed, but not necessarily make him the bell cow. To me, when you're at this point in the season, as a coach and you go through practices and walkthroughs, who's there and who's not. And, what it comes down to is Nick Scott is in his zone and you don't want to take him out of it, and I think this is the thing. The Rams defense is going to make plenty of adjustments. They're going to rotate and things like that. You can still get Rapp in the game. It's not like he, works his way all the way back from this, concussion and he can't play anymore. It's not like he loses his job. It's just he's not going to have as much of a role as maybe a Nick Scott who's been playing very well. I just don't think you can disrupt what they're doing right now. I mean, to be entirely honest with you, the only one I'm truly worried about is Darius Williams. I felt like he got absolutely abused last Sunday. I know you love him. I love him too. I've defended this guy tooth and nail, but you talk about that play, with Fournette, 4th and 1. I thought Raheem called a good play, overloaded the weak side. The strong side, you have him. Basically, his opportunity and his role, he's supposed to set that edge, because then you have, Troy Reader coming through with a run blitz and Nick Scott is the last line of defense. Well, Troy Reader trying to make that tackle, I know it's easy to crap on him. That's a hard tackle to make. Playoff Lenny and how big he is, and he's making that cut. I mean, it just, it's not likely. But it's also really hard to see behind the line, behind everything, where he's going to go. And so Nick Scott, being the last line of defense, is there in case he breaks through, a Troy Reader tackle. He's there. But really, Darius Williams, his job is to make sure that does not happen. And when he, engages in an unnecessary block there, I'm not really sure what he's doing. It forces Nick Scott to run all the way across the field and try to stop him. It's too late. You could argue that play, because of it, they scored too quickly, put enough time. Stafford goes down the field, wins the game. But I do have concerns, because there were times where Ramsey changes his assignment. It's like, all right, yeah, I'm done. I'm coming over here. I've had enough. Darius Williams has shown us at times this season why he should be paid, and he showed us at times this season why you could argue letting him go. And I'm just hoping that he balls out in this one, because there's just there's no room for that type of play. I mean, you have Debo, you have Brandon Ayuk. I mean, Jawan Jennings is playing so very well down the stretch. George Kittle. I mean, they really did a nice job of bottling up Kittle the last time they played, and really it's been the Debo show and honestly Ayuk. But you can't have these lapses, and you can't have these lapses especially against a team that wants to run the ball 40, 50 times if they get an opportunity.
Yeah, I think he's had a tough season. And there's certain games where I think people kind of, bash him undeservingly. And it's like, you're going to lose some battles. Like,
Yeah.
the same way as Jalen Ramsey got cooked last week. He's got cover 3 or whatever the coverage was. He's got a third of the field. He can't be beat over the top, and he got beat by Mike Evans. Elite versus elite. Sometimes you're going to lose. It happens, right? But I thought D. Will was definitely getting picked on last week. I mean, that was clear, right? You see him snap after snap, and that's the problem with Tom Brady, man. This guy is smart. He knows where, he's going to find his weak link, and he's going to keep going back there and back there. And what's funny is he's not the weak link in the secondary, right? He's better than David Long and all these other guys, but he was performing as the weak link in that one. So you got to keep going back there, I think. And so that's why they start to roll safety help over there. And then that's how, Jalen Ramsey gets beat. So definitely has like a trickle down effect. It's been tough, I think. But in general, I think he's still been, solid. He's been solid. He's not been that top 7 corner or top 8 corner that he was last year, but not exactly liability. Oftentimes when he gets beat, he's really close. He's at the catch point, maybe just a few inches off here or there. So, that's one thing. I think when it comes to this game, probably have a little bit less worries in terms of the passing game, right? Jimmy G, I think, does a good job, actually, though, of doing the same thing as Brady and finding the weak link. Like, he's not going to throw at Ramsey, and he hasn't for the 2 games that they played them. He's throwing at Taylor Rapp in coverage against George Kittle, or Troy Reader in coverage against George Kittle. That's a battle that you're going to take every time. So,
yeah,
they got to find interesting ways, I think, to try and cover these guys, because not everyone can cover everyone. That's just, not the way it goes. But I think Raheem Morse has been really good at that too. He's kicking guys down in like robber coverages and things like that, double teaming, passing off, certain kind of routes. So, think they've done well. I just think that that coverage needs to get a little bit tighter this week. I think they got to be a little bit more risky, just because at some point you got to get, up in the face of somebody on 3rd and 7. You can't always play 7 yards off. And Tom Brady's not out there this week. Like, you don't have to worry about, getting smashed in the passing game, snap after snap. Like, you have to take some chances, I think, in this one, because Jimmy G is the kind of guy that, can get got. Brady's not really going to be that guy often. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that's kind of the goal, is get him in 3rd and long and then make Jimmy G beat you. But he's done well in the last 2 games against the Rams, so hopefully they have a better plan in this one.
No, I absolutely agree with you, and I do think Darius. I mean, just go back and look at his game against the Cardinals on Monday Night Football, not the postseason one, but the one without Ramsey, and it really goes to show you when this guy's on, he is on. He was huge in that game. But at the same time, that game last week, that can't happen. And at the same time, he really doesn't string bad play together. He just shows inconsistency. I think that's the big thing with him. So I expect him to come back and play well. I've actually been pretty impressed with Troy Reader, and you and I both have been on Traven Howard since the get-go. So I think, this guy could really cover, any tight end. He can cover some receivers in this league. He can cover running backs. I think he's going to help against the Niners. I just, where do you think, like, if Ernest Jones is ready to go, who is the starter? Because it's almost like, do you ride the hot hand with Traven and Troy Reader? I mean, the problem is that, Reader's played the other position as well. I mean, he can do both. Traven might be the odd man out if they decide to bring in Ernest Jones. So that's my only concern, is that I don't think you can take I don't think you can take Traven Howard off the field. And I'm not 100% sure Ernest Jones comes back fully healthy either, right off the rip, because, think about it. He hasn't played in a postseason game yet. This is a massive game. This is to go to the Super Bowl. And, I mean, you could look at it in terms, when guys come back from injuries, sometimes a little bit too quickly. I look at Brian Allen. I forget what game it was, but he was not fully healthy. And I think we saw his worst game against the Niners in Week 18. I don't think he was healthy for that game. I really think he had a hard time coming back from that injury, which, to be honest with you, in real time looked season-ending. So I think it's incredible that he's out there. But I do have concerns about that. I have concerns with some of these guys, they come back too early and they don't play all that well. Like personally, I'm not rushing Whitworth back out there, to be honest with you. Maybe playing him at left guard and seeing what happens there. But I don't want to take Noteboom out if he's healthy. I know he had a little bit, I think it was a pec or a calf or something like that. If he's fully healthy, the way he just played, I'm not necessarily about to bench him either. So it's a good problem to have, because when you're at this stage in the year and we're talking about the problem is who to play, that's normally not the problem we're talking about in an NFC championship game or AFC championship game for that matter, because, we just played a 17-game schedule, and, I mean, there's injuries galore. Just look at, people are talking about Tampa, people are talking about the Rams. I mean, the Packers just got everybody back, but, I mean, it was all for naught. Maybe that kind of proves my point in a sense. Some of those guys, except for Zadarius Smith, may have not looked ready to play.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think I would mess really with what's going on right now. You look at Travin Howard. This is a guy we both talked about for years now. I thought he was going to be a starter going into this season. I thought for sure he was going to be a starter. And looks like we probably were right on that call. Like, this guy has been playing really good. I think he's the one guy, when you consider Reader, especially, that he has that speed where you feel comfortable if he has to go cover George Kittle. You know what I mean? Like, you think that he can win a lot of those battles, if not at least half of them. So Reader, on the other hand, is like, as soon as I see him in coverage out there, I'm just hoping it's a 12-yard completion, not a 57-yard one. That's kind of, that's just not his forte. But at the same time, he's the best run stuffer out of those guys as well. Reader is. So you want him out there in this game, right? Like, I think he's got a spot in this game. I think Travin Howard's got a spot in this game when it comes to coverage. And it's kind of a hard, decision to make. Like you said, it's a good one. You're talking about good players and guys that have performed well. Like, Reader has been great the last 2 games. I don't think you can complain about him at all. So it is hard to figure out kind of what the move is here. I would probably, again, play an err on the side of caution and keep Jones maybe, on the sidelines and mix and match here and there. But, I think Travin Howard is the one guy that you want on the field at all times in this game. Like, he's the guy that can play the coverage for you and is comfortable doing it. But at the same time, Reader's the best run stuffer. And obviously, San Fran wants to run the football. So that's kind of where I lean there. And it is a shame because I think Ernest Jones has been awesome this season as well.
Yeah, and again, it's, basically the insurance there is this is the NFL. You can rotate players in and out. So you can put, Jones in if you really want to give him opportunities. Totally understand that. But I agree. I think we're both in the same thing there with the hot hand. And you and I both have the Rams winning. So to wrap this thing up, if you could have any sort of play or anything that the Rams employ in this game to kind of, change the course of the game, maybe a trick play, whatever. If you could pick anything, what are you rocking? If they give you just one play to call, what is Sosa doing to catch the Niners by surprise?
Yeah, that's a good question. I might, I don't know if I got anything insane up my sleeve, and I know that you're going to like this. I know you're going to agree here, but one thing I would certainly consider is getting Brandon Powell out there on offense. And if that's a jet sweep, if that's a 17-yard carry, then so be it. But I think the best way to help spark your running game against a defense like this that is dominant up front, get them thinking. When you start to go left and right and not just, north-south, then that edge defender, that last guy on the line of scrimmage, he can't come crashing down no more. Now he's got to be a little bit hesitant because the guy, might be taking it on a jet sweep. You see it with Kyle Shanahan more than any coach in NFL. He's going to have a lot of motion, a lot of misdirection, and he's making you think on defense. And that's why the running game is so good amongst just being very powerful run blockers. So that's probably the one thing I would try to do is incorporate some of that speed and some of that misdirection in the offense this week. And I think Brandon Powell's a guy that I can't find a single bad thing to say about this guy. I think every Rams fan loves this guy.
Yeah, I can't, agree with you more. When watching the game, my father mentioned something like, why don't they get Brandon Powell in an opportunity where he just needs to read his blocks? I mean, this is somebody that I think the big issue why Tavon Austin didn't work in the NFL as a punt returner is because he's way too indecisive of what he wants to do. It works in college when you're dealing with his athleticism versus a guy that's probably an accountant right now. But when you're in the NFL, everybody's as fast as you at that point. Everyone on the, the kickoff team and the punt team and whatnot. So I just feel like when you have a guy like Brandon Powell, who's honestly, he's kind of similar in skill set to Isaiah McKenzie in the gadget form. Obviously, McKenzie's a better receiver, and that's why they actually let Powell go. But, I feel like the way they started using McKenzie was inspired by the way the Niners were using Debo. And, honestly, I think the Falcons started it all with Cordarrelle Patterson because I think teams started to watch, and all these teams, I mean, it's a copycat league. We talk about it all the time. I'm really shocked that they haven't copied the Debo Samuel approach with somebody. You see Van Jefferson come in, he takes a reverse for 15 yards. I agree. That's what you have to do. You have to keep the 49ers on their toes. And, essentially that opens up the opportunity to have that jet motion. And basically all you're trying to do there is you can run it to, this side. And, if you get, even for a split second, if you get a linebacker to lean the other way, it worked. He bought on the fact, okay, he was going to go that way. Oh, they didn't go that way. They went that way. But I always say it on here, if you're never going to do those reverse handoffs, then teams aren't going to be scared. It's like, Jared Goff, when they were putting all those guys in the box and they were begging Jared Goff to throw downfield. Like, it's just like, you're not going to throw downfield. You know what I mean? Like, we're just going to cover zero all day. You know what I mean? Like, so that's really how it works, is that you have to keep defenses honest. That is 100% real fact. And so I think, with your talk about using Brandon Powell, I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't need to go crazy here. You don't need to have Cooper Kupp throw a double pass to Cam Akers and then have him throw to OBJ, triple pass, and have OBJ throw it over the top to Van. It might be the coolest play ever designed, and if it worked, it would be amazing. But you don't have to do anything that crazy. Sometimes it's right in front of you. I mean, you talk about the Super Bowl, a guy that you and I both like, Kaderil Hodge, even got snaps in the Super Bowl. I don't see why Powell can't, get some snaps here to kind of, keep them honest and try to, get them off balance. I think all you have to do is, when you have the blockers that you have on this team, and especially Kupp, in my opinion, I think it makes it really easy. It's just another punt return. You get him in space, he catches a bubble screen or something like that, and he's just reading the field right in front of him. He can pick his blocks. He knows how to set things up. And, man, I absolutely want to see that. I know they probably won't do it, but I absolutely want to see it. I know that there's probably some Ram scouts that, I know for a fact, Ram scouts have told me they, looked at your content over when you were at Turf Show Times back the last time I talked with a few of them at the Senior Bowl, and they've watched, Downtown Rams and listened to podcasts and things like that. I'm not so sure about the front office or Sean McVay or anything like that, but if Sean McVay's listening, listen to Sosa, listen to me, listen to my father, get Brandon Powell involved. It doesn't have to be every play. Just do something to keep him honest. So I absolutely agree with you. Are you in a hurry to leave? Can we dive into the other game, or?
No, we're good. We're good. I got another half hour.
All right, cool. So let's dive into the other game. I think we absolutely killed it with that preview on that game. So now we're talking Chiefs-Bengals, which is the game before. I think this is very fun because, when the Rams kicked that game-winning field goal to go to the Super Bowl, that was before we knew who they were playing in the Super Bowl. So right after that, it was Chiefs-Patriots, and we know what happened. But this is a different circumstance. The Rams will know who they're playing against when they beat, or, if they beat the 49ers. And so, I do believe, and you believe, that they'll win. So who are they playing? So who are they playing in that Super Bowl?
Yeah, this is a tough one. So I got the Rams winning 27-20. I think it'll be, fairly close, but I think it'll have that feeling where it's like, the Rams feel like they're really in control of this one. The other side is, I think, a little bit more decisive. I love the story for Cincy. I love that, Joe Burrow, this guy's a special player. He's going to have them here in this AFC kind of talk and in the finals, I think, fairly often over the course of his career. But they just don't have enough talent, I don't think, right now when it comes to their O-line. Like, they looked bad versus Tennessee. And you could make the case that maybe they should have lost that game, right? As, one kind of thing goes a different way, they might lose that game. So I just think Casey's obviously got the experience. This is their fourth AFC championship that I think they're hosting in a row, which is just absurd. They're way more talented, I think. I think they're more comfortable, and they have a decent pass rush. Like, you've seen guys like Melvin Ingram come alive in these past few weeks. Frank Clark's starting to play better. Of course, Chris Jones is an absolute monster. I mean, I don't know how they're going to block this guy after what we saw Jeffrey Simmons do last week. That would terrify me. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. And obviously, that's a tougher matchup, I think, for the Rams. I hope that the Cincinnati Bengals win it, and I hope the Rams, win this game as well. And that's kind of the finals there. But I'm not holding my breath. I think right now KC is favored by 7. I think they're actually going to cover too.
I do as well. I have the Rams winning by 10, 27-17. I have the Chiefs winning by 10, 34-24. Look, I think everything that the Bengals have done, they deserve a lot of credit. I feel like they're way ahead of schedule. Just think about it in terms of, where the Rams were their first year with McVay. It felt like they should have won that game against the Falcons. Obviously, some things happened, but they felt way too far ahead of schedule. Like, it was great, and we appreciated it, and it was nice to have that foundation. But I wasn't necessarily worried that they weren't going to get back there, if that makes sense. And bless you, by the way. I did see that you sneezed. But you know what I mean? Even if they won that game, they win. I didn't feel like they were winning the Super Bowl that year. I felt like it was possible because you're in the big dance. But I didn't feel they felt a little bit early with the Bengals. They feel honestly 1 to 2 years early, and this is why I just think the fact that they're here is so incredible. But unfortunately, I think the bus stops here in Kansas City. They won in the regular season. I actually think it's really cool that we're getting rematches in the championship games. So, you have that game. Burrow, he threw over 400, 500 yards in that game. He's been just incredible. But the problem is, like you said with Chris Jones, as soon as they figured out that he's not an edge defender, because they were trying to use him as an edge, and I understand he really wanted to play there. He worked his way, put his weight down and everything, lost a ton of weight to play there and gain a ton of muscle, but it didn't work out, and I feel like he's better for the interior. Plus, we talked about it, the recipe for success in this league is the interior rush. When you can rush guys up the middle, we don't have to tell any Rams fans, how Aaron Donald, how, dangerous, explosive, and disruptive he can be. When you have a guy like, Chris Jones, and then on top of it, Melvin Ingram coming off the edge, which was maybe the best acquisition not named OBJ this year, maybe even better than OBJ, technically. He's been so good for them. And, I just think that Burrow doesn't have an offensive line at the moment where he's having to really just carry this team on his back. Don't get me wrong, the defense has some pieces, and I really like Logan Wilson. I think he has played some really good ball. There are some other guys there. Don't get me wrong, Trey Hendrickson was a monster signing that got a lot of hate, and I really do like the guy whose name escapes me, the safety from Ohio State.
Von Bell?
Yeah, Von Bell. He left the Saints. But at the end of the day, I feel like this team, they've gotten so far. They'll play, they'll be tough in the first half, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're winning at the start of the first half, at the start of the second half. But Mahomes in Kansas City, it's just so hard to beat that team and in that environment. And they got off to a really rare bad start for them. They typically don't start poorly like that, but they did in the season. I feel like those lapses are over, and the win or the loss that's going to come next is either next year or it's going to be in the Super Bowl, because I just don't think they're going to at least get there. And they're a team like we saw against the Bills. They could have lost that game, but they didn't. They've been in these games kind of similar to the Rams. I feel like they're more playoff conditioned. They've been in closer games. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here, 34-24. I think just the explosiveness of guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce being, a model of consistency, can overcome, that. And I'm not a huge fan of their running game. Let me just be very clear. If we're going based on the most complete offense, I think Cincinnati has the most complete offense if you don't, account for the offensive line. I do think they have a guy by the name of Joe Mixon that can do it all. And my only issue with Kansas City is their run game. But aside from that, Mahomes can throw his way back into any game. And that's the equalizer, that deep ball. And they got, guys to even make those plays, talk about a Mecole Hardman that's not talked about enough, somebody that's very fast and somebody that can, go with that deep play or maybe even throw a bubble screen. You get him, in open space. You talk about Byron Pringle. I think he's been very solid for them, not talked about enough. And then even, Darrell Williams, what he's done as a pass catcher out of the backfield. They have so many ways to counteract it. And I just think, Mahomes with 13 seconds, everyone's going to keep bringing it up, but you have to. With 13 13 seconds, if you can go down the field, tie the game, go to overtime and win it, who is beating you? I mean, that's really the thing. And I think the only team that can beat the Chiefs right now is the Rams.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree for sure. You're talking about a super explosive offense. You mentioned every piece on the offense, and I don't know how you defend Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce, or that you can. This might be like if the Rams get there, if the Chiefs get there, let's say that's kind of the matchup. It might be, and we talked about this before we hopped on, it might be another Monday Night Football 54-51 kind of thing. Like, we watched Buffalo struggle, and they were the number one pass defense, I think, technically by statistics, but, they played a lot of subpar quarterbacks, we'll say. So they got dotted up like 13 seconds. That's some Madden stuff. You talk about trying to score or, getting field goal range from the 25 in 13 seconds. That is just unheard of. So that's the kind of stuff you can do with Patrick Mahomes and with, their weapons. So definitely dangerous. Definitely not the best matchup, not the one that you're going to hope for, but the one you're kind of expecting, I think. Cincy, like you mentioned, great season, unreal. I mean, nobody talked about them as an AFC contender this season, way ahead of schedule. Actually, Zach Taylor was the betting favorite to be the first coach fired. So you talk about getting this far, crazy. And I absolutely agree. It's like that 2017 Rams season. You get into the playoffs, feels like a changing of the guard, right? It feels like it's not their year. They're still a little bit too young, too inexperienced, but it does feel like they took a huge step forward. And, in a year or two or in 3 or next 5 years, you see them probably getting to a Super Bowl or having a good shot to get there, right? So I think that's kind of where they're at. Unfortunately for them, they draw a tough team in the Chiefs, and either way, it was going to be tough. Buffalo's not going to be, or Buffalo wouldn't have been easy either, which is tough. There's a lot of good quarterbacks there, but I think that's going to be the matchup. I think it's going to be Rams Chiefs. It's going to be something that we all kind of hope for after that Monday Night Football matchup, and I think it's deserved too. I think these are the two best teams in football right now. That's just kind of the way I look at it. The Rams, the most talented team. The Chiefs may be the most dangerous team. They don't have as much player for player roster kind of talent as the Rams, but they know what they do very well, and they do it very well. And they have generational players, right? They have a receiver that's going to be probably a Hall of Famer someday, a tight end that's going to be top 3 in his position in the history of the NFL, a quarterback that could go down as the greatest ever at some point. So they're not as talented, and that's kind of what always makes me lean back to the Rams. But that is a scary matchup for sure. I think that's what it's going to be, Rams Chiefs. I kind of hope it is too, because that is the offensive firepower that everybody that watches football wants to see in 2022.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it kind of, we were talking about this off air. It felt like this was kind of, we were previewing this like week 11, week 12. And when the Chiefs didn't get the number 1 seed, weird as it is, I was like, they're going to the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know why, but like, the Titans are one of the worst 1 seeds I've ever seen, to be honest with you. That offense was pedestrian as it gets. Even when they beat the Rams, I mean, when you looked, Ryan Tannehill had taken a significant step back without Arthur Smith. By the way, credit to him. The fact that the Falcons won games was very impressive to me. Just not a lot of talent there. But, regardless of Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, and I don't really care. I mean, that team never had an offensive identity. It was, hey, if A.J. Brown's down the field, awesome, 60-yard bomb. That'll keep us in the game. And that's literally what happened against the Bengals. I mean, you talk about that big play to A.J. Brown. That really kind of kept them in it. And, I mean, Tannehill threw 3 interceptions. I really feel like Stafford has kind of gone away from playing that hero ball. And I feel like he would still be fine and comfortable in that hero ball environment. And if the Super Bowl is a hero ball environment, if McVay's like, you know what, Stafford, you're going to go out there and you're going to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, winner take all, I wouldn't be against it, to be honest with you. If the Rams defense is just in a position where they can't stop him, then I think that they're going to be in a position where Stafford's going to have to be that way. And, you talk about, Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Odell. I mean, the stars are literally everywhere. I mean, this is probably the Super Bowl. If people who say it's rigged, this is probably the Super Bowl that the NFL would want if they were actually rigging it and it was, a business decision. Because you talk about not wanting a 13-3 affair again. This would not be a 13-3 affair. This would be fireworks. This would be very explosive. I would imagine this would end up be a Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl. Like when we're talking Brady threw over 500 yards. I think it would be like that.
Yeah, it's like the offensive lover's dream. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't drop a better matchup. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if
Yeah.
that ends up being the matchup, it's not the worst thing for the Rams either. Like the Chiefs, I think, are fairly suspect on defense. And that's why I think, since he will be fairly close in terms of the score, it's not going to be close enough where I think they're sweating. But like they've allowed a lot of points, they've allowed a lot of yards. You look at Buffalo, like they were not stopped. The coin toss was the reason I won't say lost the game, but it was the reason why they didn't get a chance to win the game potentially. And they probably would have won. I don't think Josh Allen was going to get stopped if he wins
No,
that coin toss.
I
So,
agree.
and the Rams are built to pass the ball. They got a lot of weapons. I don't look at that Chiefs secondary and think, there's a Jalen Ramsey over there or there's a Jair Alexander. Like there is not that guy over there. They got a lot of iffy corners and that depth chart gets thin real quick. Tyrann Mathieu got a concussion right now. I don't know if he's going to go. And even if he's out there, like they don't have the names on that side of the ball, especially from the second level onward, that the Rams do, So I think the Rams have a better shot at stopping a Patrick Mahomes than, the Chiefs would at stopping Matthew Stafford and the various weapons that the Rams got there. So getting ahead of ourselves, but if that's the case,
it's definitely analysis because I think it's very realistic. It's not too far ahead because we're not necessarily saying they're 100%. They've already, made it. I've been very careful not to be like, yeah, the Rams, when they go to the Super Bowl, they're going to, no, I'm not about to do that. But no, I feel really good about both teams. And I mean, here's the thing. I could totally see the Chiefs winning that game too. It's not necessarily like the Rams beat the 49ers and the game's over. Like they still have to play a game in the Super Bowl. It is not easy by any stretch to win in the Super Bowl. What I think the anti-Super Bowl lover would want is a Seahawks versus Broncos affair where the first play of the game you have a snap over Peyton Manning's head and it's a snowball. Pretty much your mistakes in the regular season that barely cost you are magnified tenfold when you go to even the playoffs, but the Super Bowl, I mean, it's ridiculous. You talk about one drop. And I mean, even one overthrow. If you remember Giselle getting on, what was it, Danny Amendola? No, it was Wes Welker. When he overthrew Wes Welker, that one little thing against the Giants, that was talked about for weeks. Like, oh, well, he should have caught that. And then they were debating, like, is he tall enough to catch it? Did he jump high enough? Like, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, everything gets picked apart, like a comb, like a thin tooth comb. And it's like, that's what it really comes down to. But like with this game, I mean, if Burrow does win this game and the Bengals come away with this win, I just don't even know what happens at that point because anybody and everybody would be saying that offensive line has no chance against Von Miller, Aaron Donald, but you got to play the games. And, we've talked about before, Stafford's just off today. It's not coming out of his hand well. All it takes is to have one of those games, and it's like, what do you do if your quarterback is having an off day and it's the Super Bowl? It's the last game of the year. Like, you have to win despite that. That's why you play the games. You just never know. I mean, there's been so many times where a team was favored by this much and lost. I mean, the same thing, with the Rams. I mean, they're favored by 3.5 points. They've never beaten the Niners, in the last 6, matchups. So it's like, it's the same thing. I mean, the Bengals, they've already beaten the Chiefs. Granted, it was the regular season, but I mean, they've shown you that they can score. And I think that's the thing that keeps them in this game is that, maybe the offensive line isn't great, but man, the way they get Chase involved, the way they can get Higgins involved, they just got to be very careful, though, not to overemphasize throwing to a certain guy. They need to, I think the best way for the Bengals to win this game is you don't want to blitz Mahomes because when you blitz Mahomes, he's gonna shred you. It's actually a lot of teams were having really good success when they weren't blitzing him and they were staying back and only rushing 3 or 4. I think that's the key for Cincinnati. And trust me, it's not the best case scenario because I mean there's not really a great way to go against Mahomes, especially when Cincinnati has a defense that has some pieces, but they're not going to dominate you by any stretch. But when you look at the Bengals on the offensive side, keep Mahomes on the sideline. Establish the run with Joe Mixon. If you can run against this defense, set up play action, and utilize equally, distribute to Uzama, Boyd, Higgins, Chase, keep them honest. I mean, honestly, like last week, Mixon, they started off the game with, a reception for Mixon. That was huge. That got the drive started. I think that kind of set the tone early on. That's, to me, how you're going to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, I totally agree in the sense that if there is a way for them to win this game, it's going to be you got to keep Mahomes on the sidelines as long as possible. You're going to need sort of that repeat performance from Burrow in that passing game that they had earlier this season where, he's thrown for 400 some odd yards, 500 yards. They winced out a win at the end there, like barely squeaked it out. That's how hard it was. And then on the defensive side of the ball, keep everything in front, play a lot of cover 2, cover 4, 2 safeties where you're going to maybe die, 10 yards at a time, 12 yards at a time, that kind of thing, death by paper cut, as they say. But I would rather have that than Tyreek Hill 75-yard house it on me, like that's a backbreaker that's hard to overcome. So that's probably the best way to go about it. Try to establish the run, try to keep Mahomes on the sideline, keep guys in to chip, Uzama before he releases into a route. Same for Mixon, because you need that kind of help as much as possible. And I think they have the weapons to at least keep it competitive, like you talked about them there, and we look back to that game, the first matchup. Like if you have enough time to hold the ball, Higgins and Boyd and Chase, they will win these matchups. Like there's no doubt in my mind they will beat these corners. But the question is, will you have enough time in the pocket to sit there and let 17, 15, 18, 25-yard routes develop, or, is it going to be a sack fest? And we know the Chiefs are not the Titans. They're going to put up 30 points probably. So that's kind of the way I look at it. If you want to be the Bengals and win this game, you got to be ready to think, we got to score 30 plus or we don't stand a chance. That's kind of the way I look at it. And that, that's a big ask for a team that is a little bit more flawed, I think, than the Chiefs. But you never know. Like you said, you never know with these games, man. Anything can happen. And I would love to see it. I would love to see Joe Burrow and Cincy in the finals, man. That'd be super, super dope for that entire city and the franchise. But I wouldn't put my money down on it. So not that confident.
No, I hear you. And, it's the same thing with the offensive line. Like, all they need to do is have the best game of their life. And this changes everything we're talking about. And who's to say they can't? Like, I like Hakeem Adeniji. He played for Kansas. I'm a fan of his. He didn't play that well last week. I mean, that's not, Isaiah Prince, he didn't play that well last week. So they have these guys that aren't playing well. And maybe they're not very good, but they're NFL players. And if they have that one game where they give Burrow even like a second more than he had last week, he won the game last week, getting sacked 9 times. I don't know how much more protection he needs, like what's the threshold, but I mean, just talk about it, like the way Josh Neiman was playing at left tackle for the Packers. I mean, no one would have expected that the whole year, and then they didn't use him in the playoffs, and they lost in the first round. Some of these guys, they step up, they rise to the occasion. They didn't do it last week, but, they got to be feeling pretty bad about last week. Like, we won that game, but man, we should not, like, the quarterback should not be picking himself up off the turf 9 times or more in the game. And, I do feel like there's a chance that they could have a really like surprising performance on top of it. I just think with the Titans, what they have with Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry, I mean, I think they're better than the Chiefs up front, to be honest with you. I think the Chiefs have stuff, but the way Autry and Simmons played in the interior, we saw that against the Rams. They had no answer for that. So I do think the interior pressure is what really hurt Burrow, and if they can limit that, and of course they're going up against Chris Jones, who I think is maybe the second guy, third guy behind maybe Buckner and of course Donald at the top. But I mean, if they could really limit the interior pressure, Burrow can sidestep. He's not the most athletic, but he can get out of the pocket. He can sidestep it, and he could step up in the pocket. And when you're letting him step into his throws, this guy has the best on-target percentage of anybody in the league at quarterback this year, according to PFR. So, yeah, that's kind of my thought there is, you keep him clean. He has all the weapons. The defense is solid. They have a shot to win this game. I'm going to say they lose by 10, but they have a shot. And I won't be surprised for, you betting folks out there. I might actually take the first half line on the Bengals covering.
That's interesting. I'm not really a first half, second half kind of better.
I'm not either, but
you never know.
That's there for me.
That is interesting. Yeah, no, I got a little parlay going where the Rams cover and the Chiefs cover.
Okay.
And I got plenty of dollars that came from, I think I put this bet down. I think it was maybe within like 3 days that Stafford was traded to the Rams, traded. They couldn't officially do it when they announced that they were trading for him. I think it was like mid-February, late February.
Yeah.
I went to Bet Online, immediately placed all the money I had in the account for the Rams to win the NFC Championship game and the rest for the Rams to win the Super Bowl. So we're sitting pretty right now. I don't know. I'm feeling good. I got enough like inside of me to want the Rams to win just because they're the team. They're our team. And that'll just drive, enough fandom for me to really want that win. But then there's a couple dollars aside for that as well, which only heightens my expectations. So I'm all in.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like I keep telling people on here all week and last week, like, don't be superstitious. And I refused to bet them in the Super Bowl because I didn't want to jinx it. I had them going 15-2 before Akers got hurt and winning the Super Bowl. As soon as I saw Stafford went there, I was like, they're winning the Super Bowl. So I'll be okay with that. I'll be okay with, a smaller wallet. And if I didn't jinx it and that means you didn't jinx it, we're good. We're living large, my friend. All we want is the Super Bowl, but we also want good football. And the divisional round was freaking incredible. Just hope that this week, obviously, we get a Rams win and that Chiefs Bengals game. If that's the game of the year, I'd be happy, but I'm not expecting it necessarily to be the game of the year. I think it'll be a good game, but I think at the end of the day, the Chiefs win by 10. Do you have any final thoughts? Because I know you probably have to get going soon.
I think that's mostly it. We pretty much covered everything, Like I said, I think it's going to be Chiefs Rams. I'm fairly confident. I've been very confident on the Rams, the last 2 weeks. There's just something about this team that's a little bit different. You get that aura, 2018, I think we had that same feeling where it was the team. They were the best team, the most talented team, and they got there. Unfortunately, right, they kind of choked in the finals there. But, you change one little play here or there. Brandon Cooks doesn't drop a touchdown, or Jared Goff pulls the trigger on him in the back of the end zone wide open. A tinge of a second earlier, you're looking at a different game. Or that Todd Gurley, where they call it back on the holding is 3-3 in the fourth quarter, and he's about to go into their territory. So I think they're going to get it done. I'm going to say it now. I think they will get it done. I think the Rams will win the Super Bowl this year. It feels like their year. And before the playoffs started, I said Rams over Chiefs. I'm going to stick with it, and that's pretty much it.
I agree, man. Rams over Chiefs. I've been saying that since I think around week 12 I switched from Rams Chargers. It just didn't feel. They 31st in the league in scoring defense is not going to do it. So, hey, man, appreciate you so much for coming on. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button on there. We got about 73 likes, 180 people in here. Just amazing, man. Just on a Wednesday, like midday, just having people in here. Pretty awesome. So please be sure to hit that thumbs up, like this. Let YouTube know that you do enjoy this type of content. Get that in the recommended, help the algos out. But for us, I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He is Sosa Kremenjas, and you can check out all of his amazing content over at Underdog Fantasy. He is the former host of Locked On Rams, so if that's where you know him from, well, that's he was over there. But Sos, thank you so much, my man. Go follow Sos at QB's MVP on Twitter. And do you have like an Instagram or anything else you want to plug, or is that good?
That's pretty much all my football talk. Yeah, Instagram is more
that.
just a couple personal things here or there, nothing too interesting. But yeah, no, that's everything.
All right, so I'm going to end this thing. You guys take care. Be good people. I will see you guys soon.